It's still a long walk.
It's a long walk.
I
This
agree,
is
that's a
this is
very
making
long
the
one.
assumption that
Everybody's
that the
able-bodied.
setback doesn't matter. That as long as you get your landscaping right, that it doesn't matter what the distance is. And
That's
it's hard
the-
to agree with that. It's
We
a
don't-
long walk.
we
It
don't
doesn't
believe that
invite
will
you
often
if
be
it's
the
far
case.
away, if it's in the distance, if you're standing on the sidewalk and you have to go a long way. Do we want to promote pedestrians and cyclists or not? If we're deciding that we don't, which seems like we are, then fine. The landscaping is a great substitute.
People
We're already
walk a long
defining-
way downtown. I mean, you park in the parking lot that's quite a distance away from Main Street, and you walk to get to those stores. I mean,
Through
We're
framed
defining a
spaces.
35,
well, that's what the
36
proposal is,
footers.
to create a framed space for the
buffer
pedestrian.
from the road. And so, how deep are the lots? What's the variability that we're talking about?
They're
Not that
very
deep. That's the thing. We're not talking
This only
Hadley
really
here.
would apply to the largest lots on King Street. It's not really relevant to the vast majority of King Street.
So, again, that comes back to, does it make sense to, what are we trying to accomplish with the regulation?
We're trying to accomplish for all modes. We want to make it as friendly as possible for bicycles, but
Right.
also for pedestrians, and also
Right.
for transit, and also for cars, and, so it's balanced between all those.
And I think the other piece of it is this gradual, sort of, we're taking pieces at a time. So the focus on really getting the buildings close is the next chunk, which is on lower part of King Street.
Right.
And this is an improvement. And at this point, I think there's been a lot of discussion that this is still primarily auto-oriented, but we want to make accommodations for all modes. But the focus for really getting the buildings tied in is the next step is that entranceway business. And that's where we need to focus a lot of the incentives, I think, for getting those buildings close to the street. So I would argue that, again, this is another incremental step that makes it better for pedestrians than it is now.
So the only problem with that is that anything we build now, we're going to live with for 15 years, 30 years. So the longer we wait to start,
But we also
Yeah,
need to
long
be
as
sure
we
we're
take-
providing circumstances that allow for building now.
Right, it's not more friendly for pedestrians if they're empty sites.
So-
Definitely.
So we have, is there a proposal that we can look at as a compromise proposal that addresses what we're trying to regulate?
Well, I guess, do we need, parking lot design guidelines? Is that what, or how would you write zoning?
Parking design we're pretty close to in our current zoning. So we're talking about, that's more tweaking, that's not a whole design guidelines, that's.
But this is, I think, the thing about, if you look at Dillon's, this is 2 rows of parking in front of a building, you have to cross 10 feet.
Right.
If you double that, you'd cross 20 feet to go 70. I crossed, to go in front of, from Thorns to Faces, crossing Main Street, that's 100 feet, So we're talking, this is gonna be a lot easier than it is to cross Main Street if you have to cross 2 little 10-foot buffers. So I'm fine with multiple rows of parking as long as we have a promenade design, because even if you did this, if I had 6 rows of these, it's still gonna be easier than crossing Pleasant Street in front of the Pleasant Street Theater. So,
I
For
don't-
me, that's the direction I would like to have it going.
Is the issue physical ease? I mean, probably most people can walk it more than the look. And is it how inviting this building is to pedestrian traffic and those pieces? I mean, what I feel I'm hearing is a compromise between, if that's what, in my mind, that's what I would like to see. Is it a compromise to saying that we feel that we aren't going to get anybody come in and build there, so we need to make this change. So if we just really feel we're not going to get anybody to come and build, is that why we need to?
well, I guess,
approve that?
not to be facetious, but do I go to a store because I could walk to it, or do I go to it because I want something that's in the store? And then I'll choose to get there the best way I can.
A huge percentage of buying is impulse buying.
But we're also trying to make it so that people that don't
Not-
have
not-
cars,
not
and
in
people who
automobile
live there.
Right, and I guess I
neighborhoods,
don't-
They don't have that choice. It's about, they need to go shopping.
Sure.
And they gotta walk or take a bike.
But we also
Take
don't
the
want
bus.
the people who want to shop in places to go to Hadley. We sort of want them to be in Northampton doing it. So
I think it's trying to meet all those different
Right.
needs.
That's why we're in the fine grain.
Yeah,
There's too
yeah.
many needs competing.
Yeah,
And they are competing, and it sounds like optimizing any one involves a trade-off with the others. So it's gotta be compromised, it's gonna be imperfect somewhere.
So a question I have is that, I mean, we've already talked about how most lots are gonna be, most buildings are gonna be closer to the street just because of the configuration of the lots. That in terms of, it's really, we'd really be looking at like the Hill and Dale site, maybe the concrete, the Willard site, that, I mean, how, would a developer really want to be that far away from the street? In other words, how different, I mean, if Frank Colcaccino had his druthers there, how much closer to the street would the building have been, rather than right now?
He would have it back.
He'd go back even more?
He wants parking in the front where people
But
can
he
drive
can't go
by.
back anymore, it's,
I mean, that's his, that's not my opinion, that's
Right.
his opinion. He wants the building in the back, he wants to see a nice, clean, open parking lot that has parking spaces available. Customers drive by, know they can drive in and get a parking space, they know it's active.
But just in terms of
That's
numbers,
good.
he'd still want his loading docks in the back. So
Yes.
it's a limit to how far back the building will go.
I
There's
guess
so many traffic
well, you can barely have loading docks right now.
It would be a
I
thin
mean,
build.
that's,
If you were doing that site over again.
If he were to wipe it clean, he told me the same thing, I was surprised.
Right.
Wipe it clean, he'd want it at the back of the lot with room for loading docks and nicely landscaped parking. He may not have said nicely landscaped. But parking in front.
Yeah, I guess my concern is more the smaller lots, dictating what they can do on those, they're already constrained by property lines.
Sorry, no, I was thinking, I thought we maybe were closer. I mean, to me, I guess I mean, I've said how I feel. I could go with nicely landscaped parking and not have to mandate to 2 rows, but I know we do have to start the planning board meeting in a minute. So if we're not as close as I thought, I'm not sure how we decide if we take a vote or I don't know how we.
Can I just make a proposal for what nicely landscaping path to building would look like? So,
Not with that thing.
that would be there forever, that's fine. So how about you have, parking spots, they're 18 feet generally, so, this would be 18, 10, sidewalk, 10, 18. And then whatever your drive lane needs to be, 20 some odd feet, 24.
Well, 24 between the park rows, but actually you could have in essence a narrowing there, so it probably could be 20.
And then
In essence,
the
a curve
pattern
section.
continues.
Right, that was essentially what I was saying.
It's like a bump out.
And then you could go with no maximum then?
I wouldn't support this, but,
But you wouldn't block it.
but I'm just trying to get us out of this room. Something that's concrete and
We do appreciate
workable.
that, some of us.
This is according to your sketch, but you're just allowing more than one bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the promenade is an excellent idea.
Okay, so we've got 18, it adds up to 36 feet by 10 on either side,
The width of the promenade, you've got it,
10 or
20
12.
some odd feet wide. The parking bay is 8 or 9 feet wide, so 18 plus your walkway.
So three spots.
3 spots.
3 spots will make it,
30 feet
You've
roughly.
you've added another row of parking, is what you're saying.
what's that? No, 3 spots at 27?
Yeah, 3 spots roughly 27 feet wide.
27 by 18 by 18. So 36 by 27.
Well, there's actually a 6-foot landscape buffer in between too.
Where-
We aren't gonna solve the specific
Well,
problem.
I don't,
It's not
we're getting a little
yeah.
too detailed, so I
Yeah.
think what you're saying is you're saying 2 rows.
doing it anyway.
What's that?
That's 2, you're saying that's what 2 rows would look like.
Yeah.
Well, aren't you saying that you could just keep going with
We
that?
could keep on going with that.
Right.
I mean, that's
We
the way
find
you guys
that
are
the
headed.
experience is not
Right.
right.
And
It's going along with
in that
Carolyn's.
concept, if the developer wants to go deeper in the lot, you're gonna have to invest more in the parking and the promenade.
Really attractive.
But if
So it
that's what
becomes an
fits,
incentive.
if that's what fits
Yeah.
the lot, if that's what fits their business need, and that'll
Have we
allow them to
reached a
build, then
compromise
yes.
that people can live with?
promenade.
What about the idea of, we haven't addressed trees in the parking lot besides this, that we're also in
each of these.
Dylan's proposal.
think trees in the parking lot is
Isn't that a landscape?
it has to be there. I don't think we're in a position to talk about
There will be some.
how, the specific arithmetic of it.
Well, there's already a requirement, right, so it would be mimicking.
So I don't wanna walk away without having heard an answer to that question. Can everybody live with, this first three stripes, and then in terms of the, location and setback for parking, that it's, basically to the developer's discretion, as long as they're obligated to, invest in that kind of a promenade for the pedestrian experience?
Personally, I'm wholeheartedly opposed to having more than 2 rows of parking in front of buildings.
I agree, and I think that although I do sympathize with Frank Policino and other developers that we heard in the public meetings, that setbacks do matter to people in the community. So this is how it's being weighed, and I think we should finish the meeting, but I do disagree.
So, I guess that's a question, can live with, can't live with? I mean, can live with and say, yes, we've reached a conclusion, and I'll either stand aside and just not take a position, or but I'll stop short of blocking it, or
That would be,
are you
that's the
blocking?
position I would take, because I can't see us making us work better. But what about you, Danny?
I just don't want to meet any longer,
That's,
so I'm not gonna block it.
yeah, that's what I would, I'm in the same place. Maybe just wherever it gets registered, that this is not how I.
Right.
And there's no one person, one veto, so it doesn't matter if I block. So I block. No, it doesn't matter.
Well, your proposal, I think, suggests a compromise, right?
It's telling you gotta leave,
This
Kevin.
is-
Well, I mean, I throw in with Dylan and Danny, so we're starting to get a significant number maybe, I don't know.
If we're
There's
not
four.
at a
I just think
compromise,
this
then
needs
we're
more
not at a
discussion.
compromise. I'm just trying to identify whether we are or not.
I feel the other way, but I don't think we should jam home a resolution just because we want to get out of the room.
So we have
I don't
one
think we're near
outstanding item?
consensus, and we should talk more about it.
I also, though, think that we have the information. The viewpoints have been divergent from the very beginning. There's been no movement on.
Well, there's been a lot of.
There's been a lot
There's been a lot of.
You're right, I've agreed that we should have parking in front of buildings up to 2 rows.
There's been a lot of movement all the way around.
So I don't really see any compromise being possible. I think there are different viewpoints of what the street should be and what is best for King Street. I don't see compromise being possible.
Well, I would agree that if we convened in another week, the information wouldn't change.
Yeah.
So let the planning board decide?
Well, it's city council, I mean, we
Oh!
recommend the city
Oh,
council,
please.
they could look at this and say, whatever, maximum, no max. I mean,
We could take the half full glass thing. I mean, we only have 2 things that
Right.
work. I mean, we agree on a lot of stuff.
We did.
From an outsider's perspective, this looks like 99.5%, everybody's bought into the same stuff. And the differences here are, I don't see, as an outsider who hasn't been part of this process, it doesn't seem like, well, now somebody wins. No, it seems like there's a compromise here, that it isn't gonna be optimum. It isn't gonna be optimum for the developer that says, I wanna do whatever I want. It isn't gonna be optimum for the pedestrian, it isn't gonna be optimum for anybody. It's gonna be a compromise.
Thank you, Kevin.
As long as nobody likes us, we're good.